We'll start with you on, and I'll move it over when you.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay. The Delaware County Board of Commissioners is now back in session for our November 30th budget hearing. And we now have the Delaware County Regional Sewer District with us. And I'll let our director, Tiffany Mag, introduce everybody.
All right, thank you. Thanks for having us here this morning. I'm Tiffany Mag, Director of Environmental Services. Here with me this morning I have Eric McPeak, who is the Deputy Director of Operations, and also Gina DeWitt, who is our Fiscal, Utility, Billing, and Administrative Supervisor.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Jennifer. So
You're
with that, I will go ahead and start off with our 2022 year in review. You should all have a copy of this in front of you as well as, of course, on your screen. But starting with the revenues, we have the 2022 budgeted column, and then we forecasted our actuals out for the rest of 2022 in the second column, and then that variance, above or below the budgeted number in the third column. So starting off with the capacity fees, we had budgeted $7.6 million. That was based on 816 new connections, which included both residential and commercial. And then the actuals, we're looking at about $12.5 million is what we're forecasting to have by the end of the year. So we really had an extremely busy year, almost double the amount of connections that we expected. We were projecting about 1,574 connections, so just under double what we had budgeted, with a variance of $4.8 million ahead of where we had budgeted. Inspection fees, those are pretty close to what we had budgeted. We budgeted $716,000. We're expecting to come in right around $758,000 for a variance of $42,000 above what we had budgeted for the year. Same thing with plan review fees. Those came in relatively close to what we had budgeted, a variance of $32,000 ahead. And then user fees, of course, those are based on what we have existing plus the new connections, so that would, of course, be ahead of what we had budgeted, $320,000 ahead of what we had budgeted for 2022.
User fees, is that what you bill or what you collect?
That is what we bill,
Okay.
and then what we collect would be included in other sources. Correct, Gina?
The delinquent
So
user
the
fees.
delinquent fees are included in the other sources number, this almost $700,000 number.
Okay.
The majority of that is delinquencies in that $700,000 number. So we actually do collect, I think in 2021, we collected 102% of what we had billed because we have late fees included. So we did collect the full amount at the end of the year. So finish out the year with we had budgeted $28.5 million in revenues. We're expecting to collect about $33.77 million, variance of $5.23 million. And then on the operating expenses, services and charges, so we had budgeted $5.1 million. In actuals, we're looking at about $4.5 million for a variance of $535,000. That actually has some outstanding invoices for like parts and supplies that we've ordered due to supply chain issues. They haven't come in yet. Some of that money will carry over, so we won't see the full $535,000 as a variance there. It'll probably be more to the $200,000 to $300,000 range. Same thing with materials and supplies. We're showing about $223,000 under on that one. Same thing there. We will have some operating supplies and equipment that will come in and be billed before the end of the year. Then salaries and benefits. This one we're showing a pretty big variance, $911,000 under. If you can see the star there, it's because of the vacancies. We've had just a ton of vacancies in 2022, which we've already talked about, I think, over the past several months. Package plant manager, the lab manager, construction coordinator, 2 engineers, 2 inspectors, 5 maintenance techs, an EMT, collections crew chief, 4 laborers, 1 regional wastewater facility operator, 3 relief operators, and a utility billing specialist. Also, we did not fill any intern positions last year. I think basically just due to the number of positions that we needed to fill that were not interns. So in total, a $1.67 million variance on the operating expenses. So right at about $7 million difference in what we had budgeted to where we are at for 2022. Any questions on that slide?
I guess just an observation, again, you guys do an outstanding job of reporting, monitoring and reporting your financial statements. And Justin Navi, I don't know if you've all met, is our new finance director, but Justin, this is the kind of reporting that we'd love to see across the board. They do an outstanding job.
You'll have to meet Justin.
Yep,
Yeah.
I just did. Yep. Okay, so moving forward to the 2023 budget, kind of same type of information here, looking at the 2022 budget versus the forecasted actuals, and then what we're budgeting for 23. So starting off with the capacity fees, like I said previously, we had budgeted 816 new taps for 2022. We're going to get about 1,574. We're budgeting 1,127 for 2023. This is a 3% increase on the residential and a 1.25% increase on the commercial over the total system. So this is based on the fact that we have 36 new plans that have been approved in 2022. For the same time period last year, we had 28 new sets of plans that were approved. So we're still seeing that high number of plan approvals throughout the district. Just over the past month, I've had more conversations with developers that are pulling out of projects where they're seeing the interest rates starting to really just detract from those sales, and I guess basically how long they want to carry those units on the properties there. So that's something I've really been hearing more recently, but you'll see on the next slide, we have quite a bit of commercial apartment type complexes coming in where we expect that we likely can still hit this $10 million number in that increase that we have projected. So then same thing on the inspection fees and plan review fees, just a slight increase from what we're forecasting for 2022 on the actuals. I guess as a whole, one's a little higher, one's a little lower. And then user fees, same thing there, that's based on the 3% residential increase and 1.25% commercial to get to the $20.7 million number. The other sources is based on the delinquencies, and then also next year we do have some TIF revenues that we are anticipating to receive. I think it's about $150,000 in the TIF revenues on top of the delinquencies to get to the $807,000 number. Then on the operating expenses, the services and charges, this is slightly different than what we did last year. We took the Clark Shaw reimbursements out of this fund. That was something that the auditor recommended that we do, so that's why you're seeing a lower number here. It's about $600,000 lower because that goes into a separate fund now. Otherwise, the services and charges are just a slight increase. Materials and supplies, same thing there. We are budgeting very close to where we budgeted for 2022, and we are expecting to see those forecasted actuals just a little bit higher, coming up closer to that $1.2 million number. Salaries and benefits, it's actually a decrease from our budget from last year, but as long as we can fill those positions, it'll be quite a fair increase from where we were at in 2022 on the actuals. So we're continuing to push with those positions that have been vacant for a while now. Any questions on anything on this slide?
Just a question I ask every year regarding user fees. We
Yeah.
do still have in place and
So
planning for the future.
Yep, so in 2023, our user fee goes to, I think it's $37.30. $38.50, we're at $37.30 right now. It goes to $38.50 per ERU in 2023. And then in 2024, we already have on resolution to increase that to $39. And then that's the cap. We don't have any additional resolution beyond that. That was basically a 3% increase per year over the course of the past, how long has it been, 6 or 7 years? So we would want to look at that again. I think we would be at the point that we already have the financial model. It's very simple to do that evaluation. We do it every year anyways. And that would be something that I think would make a lot of sense to just continue likely that 3% forward, continue from $39, which is still a pretty reasonable rate, for a single home compared to the rest of the
We're
state.
very reasonable compared to the
Right.
Oh, yeah.
surrounding, and I just want to make sure we don't get ourselves in a situation, because down the road, we're going to have to start doing work that's going to require funding, and hopefully we make sure we have it there.
Yeah, exactly.
The
That's-
inspection and plan review fees, You know, across the board, we're seeing significant increases in the costs of providing services, whether it's wages or consultants or other costs. Have you reviewed those to look at the pricing of those services to make sure we're recovering our cost?
So we did, actually, it was, I think, a year or 2 years ago when we changed our resolution. Previously, in the inspection fees, we kept track of every hour that we spent. We had I believe it was $75 per hour for the man hours and then $150 per hour for the CCTV units or any cleaning that we had to do, cleaning and televising. So we kept track of that hourly, and then once we would go over that amount, we would ask the developer for additional funds. They would provide additional funds, and then we would kind of just keep going that way. We changed it a couple years ago, so if we didn't use all the funds, we would give it back to them at the end of the project. Changed it a couple years ago to not give them any money back at the end of the project, but in exchange for that, we would do the televising at the end of the project, where previously we had the developer contract that out, provide us the information. So that was kind of the exchange, that they would get something in return for us not returning their funds. We have seen that doing that process has seemed to cover that gap on funds, but we could certainly look at those again as far as like the man hours, the $75 per hour. We do have a little bit of a hard time when we have to use outside inspection services, like we've had like an HRA contract, a DLZ contract. Getting them to come out on site for $75 an hour is difficult, right? They're charging, I think, even towards like $90 an hour is really more where they are, but we recover some of that cost through not returning those fees. So we could certainly look at that again, but I think for right now, we're okay, but I think in the future, that would be something to consider.
My point is the $75 an hour a correct rate? With our increased costs of providing that service, is that the right number to use?
It's probably low. I think it's low.
Yeah.
I think we could look at that again.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Good points.
All right, so on the revenues, this is kind of more specific to the capacity fees and tap fees, just diving into the past 5 years. So you can see from 2019 up through 2021, kind of a steady increase on the capacity fees, and then pretty significant year 2022. The $12.5 million number is one of the highest we've seen in a really long time, and then the budget of the $10.1 million. And then kind of down through the user fees, we've talked about that, as well as the number of taps. You can see those numbers documented there, but kind of some of the text on the bottom. We're budgeting for 311 more connections than what we budgeted in 22. That's the 3% and 1.25% increase. Because of the 36 sets of new plans that we saw in 2022 through November, compared to the 28 sets of plans that we approved last year. Typically, we see those the plans will get approved in 1 year, and you'll see those taps typically the next year. So that would, kind of lend us to think that we're going to get a significant volume again next year. Tap fee credits redeemed, we've had $380,000 for this year, $197,000 last year. I think we would expect probably less than the $380,000 for next year, but those of course they come in, as they come in with the developments. And then the next bullet, we have seen more multifamily connections in 2022. We've had 210 ERUs for multifamily compared to 76 in 2021. But then I think kind of more importantly, we are anticipating several large multifamily complexes to begin construction in 23 and 24. That actually represents 2,100 ERUs, which is significant. So I think that's where we will potentially still get back to that $10 million capacity fee number because of that large number of multifamily complexes. And then we have on the bottom there, you can see the capacity fees will remain the same in 23, and the user fees will increase to $38.50 per month. So just kind of some of our more notable expenses. This list typically is actually longer, but in order for us to kind of keep our budget to remain at a 3% or less increase, this list is smaller than what you typically would see, but we do have the big one at the top there, the biosolids semi-truck purchase. I'm gonna have Eric talk through that one on the next slide. This was something that we presented last year at the budget hearing with kind of a comprehensive plan for what we want to do with our biosolids hauling. We're going to relook at that slide just to kind of refresh on why we're doing what we're doing with that purchase. And then the camera truck, we do need a new camera tractor computer for that truck. It's a $50,000 purchase. We actually have, I think you told me, 9,000 hours on our camera. Typically, they're replaced at 3,000 hours. So, and the guys, when we talked about that in our budget meetings, I thought, yeah, maybe it's time to throw that in there before it doesn't work anymore. Which I think we already can't get new parts and things like that because of the age on it. Lower Scioto roofing, this is for some repairs to some of the existing roofs. Eric filled me in that these roofs were built by a developer for more residential type construction, because I think that's maybe what they were used to, instead of commercial type construction. So there's some necessary repairs due to some of the, I think, construction methods on those roofs. And then OECC building modifications. So this $435,000 is for repairs to buildings that are not being touched by the OECC Headworks project.
Okay.
I know anyone that's been out there knows that it's a really nice facility from the road, but when you get in, there's some deterioration. So this would be for, I think it's the filter building, centrifuge building, there's a vehicle storage building, just some buildings that are just not being touched by the other project. We may or may not decide to put this into that project so that the contractor control when another contractor is on site. But we're going to obviously do a cost evaluation on whether that helps us or hurts us, and then decide which way to go with that. Truck fuel, this is just the cost of fuel compared to 2022, $30,000 additional. Polymer cost, $60,000 above 2022. So this is the one I've come to session a couple times to talk about the pilot study that we did. So we were able to reduce those costs. Previously it was 80 cents a pound or gallon. Look at my notes here. Yeah, and it has increased to $1.80. So by doing that pilot study, we were able to kind of rein that cost into only $60,000 additional for 2023. Otherwise, it would have been $200,000 additional with just the increased cost. Central cost allocation, that's our contribution for all the services we use at the county, is $40,000 additional. And then vehicles, $48,000 above what we had spent in 2022 for the enterprise leases. And Eric, I'm going to let you talk a little bit about this one because it's a little different than what we put in the budget. So this may be something that we need to kind of review as we go or change it in the budget now.
Yeah, so when we budgeted in September and submitted, I think early October, the state bid price for a truck was $41,000, and at the time Enterprise wasn't sure if they would be able to get trucks. And once we looked at the state bid pricing, we thought, well, we'll keep these for 7 to 10 years, and you're looking at a 40%, if you stretch that cost out with depreciation, less cost. Well, when we actually got the cost back from Enterprise, they could provide us trucks, and the state bid contract that I used for pricing had expired, and the new one went up $20,000 per truck. So instead of a $40,000 truck, which has been great, we've always gotten trucks at such a low rate. They're now, the same truck is now $60,000. So basically, this is a change in our budget annually. So we had $233,000 allocated to purchase vehicles, off state bid. Now we're going to get those through the enterprise program. And over the 5-year period, comparing the new prices, it is a little bit less expensive, simply based on the purchase price to go with enterprise. So that we'll need to change the budget to show that. Right now, we didn't allocate for any additional enterprise lease. So.
Okay.
Okay, and this is just a recap of we looked at an overall strategy for hauling biosolids. This is again something, we make clean water and biosolids, so we have to move this material. Our plants are set up to dry them out and haul them immediately. We have no on-site storage, smells can generate, things like that. And as you all know, we're in several neighborhoods that's not gonna work. Typically doesn't work in any neighborhood, but we looked at it. We started looking at replacing these semi-trucks because we were getting to the point where we had to make some decisions, replace our fleet, hire everything out completely, and that's what these lines are. The orange line is a cumulative cost over a 10-year period. That's why it goes up, showing if we contracted 100% of this out, which isn't good for our operations. We often have scheduling issues. If another company's truck's down, we have no control. Now we're backing up biosolids and things like that. It causes us problems. So I looked at, we did this last year, us hauling completely, which would require hiring additional staff, maybe another vehicle or two, or doing a hybrid model, which is what we're doing now. So 70% of this we haul out of Alum Creek. That's why it's 70%. We make so much biosolids out of Alum Creek. That'll change a little bit over time, but not tremendously. And we contract 30% of it out. So the hybrid model is in the long term, less. And we'll actually, by going down this route, we'll save 1.2 million over 10 years by doing the hybrid model as compared to hiring everything out. The hybrid model requires us to purchase these vehicles. We purchased a dump truck in 21, in 22, we found a semi truck to purchase, and obviously y'all approved that for last year. And then on this year's budget is the purchase of an additional one. We have 200,000 in there. The last one cost us 160, with a little bit of changes to modify the vehicle. And so these lines are included in 8-year depreciation, typically how you would depreciate a semi-truck. I think it's 30% in the first year and 20% additional year. That's why you don't see any real jumps. Around 2030, you see some increases because now we'll release these vehicles just like you would anything else. Sell your old vehicle, get a new one. But that'll keep the maintenance down. And the key here is to give us multiple ways to dispose of this material. This provides us that. Sometimes we have to ask the contractor to haul more for us if we have equipment down or something like that. So we're continuing down the same path, and we've looked at the numbers, and this does save overall cost. And cost is one dimension of this, but the other thing, like I said, this is a critical piece of our infrastructure that always shows up at the wrong time to be a problem. So this will help us control those big peaks in spending and problems from time to time.
So with that, we'll jump into a few of the master plan projects and kind of status on some of those. I know you've seen this slide over the past 6 years now, 7 years. But you can see we're really making a lot of headway with the pink color, the complete projects. Those are becoming more numerous throughout the map. We still are working through a lot of the Central Alum Creek project design, I guess preliminary design at this point. We also have like the Berkshire Township Pump Station and a few other projects that really are just kind of left to be kicked off, to be heading towards design and construction eventually. Over there in the yellow, you'll see the package plant projects that are currently in design, getting ready to go to construction. Eric's going to talk about those on an upcoming slide. But really, I think kind of what I want to talk about with this slide is the fact that we're really getting to the point in our master plan, now that we're almost 7 years in, we need to kind of take a step back and reevaluate what do we need to be doing with the last half of this master plan, right? So I think we've spent, I can't remember what it's been to date, maybe $50 million, something like that. We have another $172 million that we're showing that we're going to be spending between 23 and 28, which that's drastic. That's a lot of money to spend in 6 years. So we really need to take another look at, is that reasonable? Do we have some projects that are going to push out even further? Looking at even like Central Alum Creek, that project was costed out back in 2016, attempted to be inflated to $20-25. That needs to be relooked at, of course, with where the construction market is today. So that's something that we plan to start in-house instead of hiring a consultant for the near term, just with our capabilities with Julie McGill and Mason Jansak and having that master planning experience from Julie's prior consulting days. So we plan to look at, first of all, Berlin Business Park. I know there's been a little bit of discussion on some of the more complex or higher user projects that could come in there. Are we sizing that plant right? Are we sizing the pump stations right? What could that area look like different from what we already have planned? Same thing with Harlem Township. That was completely left out of our 2016 master plan because it was so far out in time. So we'll be, taking a look at that, looking at the comprehensive plan that the township is coming up with, meeting with the township trustees, making sure that we're coming up with a plan that matches what they want to do, along with the timing of when the sewer, the tunnel is gonna be coming up from the city of Columbus. And then we have, the areas like the Sawmill Parkway. We have eventually plans to bring the sewer north with another project up there. I think we threw a $5 million placeholder in the master plan back in 2016, which is likely no longer relevant. So kind of looking at what that looks like and bringing that area, forward with additional sewer service to the north. So that's something we plan to really just start kind of dipping our toes into next year. Hopefully within the next year to 2 years, we'll have kind of an updated plan as to what that looks like. And of course, we'll have you all involved in that process as well.
Time flies.
Time does fly, that's right.
16,
Right. I like to see the amount of pink we have on the map.
I
though.
know,
It's
that's
surprising-
very impressive.
Surprising how much money
A
we
lot
still
of
have left
pink.
to spend with a little bit of stuff that's not pink. So
Yeah,
we
yeah.
have to kind of take another look at that.
I noticed that too.
So the Central Allen Creek plant really is, you've got it labeled as under construction?
No.
What is it?
Preliminary design. It's in green. So.
Oh, I see, okay.
Yeah, it's right there in the middle of that peninsula.
Okay.
So we're in preliminary design right now
Okay,
with
that's
our
what I thought.
consultant. I told them I wanted them to be complete with it by June 1st of 2023, so that we could, really ramp up our design efforts at that time. So that's kind of what we're envisioning right now, and I'll talk about that on an upcoming slide with the status on that.
Okay.
And then this you cannot see at all, so sorry about that. This is our financial model, just a snapshot for 22 and 23. We spent right at $10 million in 2022 on projects, and then if you can see that, it's $48.7 million that we plan to spend in 2023. Total master plan cost is right at $210 million with what we've been plugging in as actuals along the way. So then we have on the right-hand side there, some of our cash flow and capital spending projections pulled out of our financial model. So you can kind of see that we're planning on a big expenditure in 2023 with that OECC project, and then it'll kind of dip back down until we get to Central Allen Creek.
Assume you'll get into the debt structure?
On Central?
What we've been working on the last couple of months.
So obviously we're taking out the OWDA loan for the OECC project, and I would anticipate we would do something similar for Central Allen Creek. But other than that, everything else is currently planned to be funded with cash.
Yeah, again, that's wonderful cash flow projections that helps us
Sure. Yeah.
plan.
Pump station projects update. I'm going to start with the pictures that we have. The Heights pump station in the top right, that was completed last year. I don't know if anyone's driven past it, but it's a really nice looking pump station
Yeah,
up there.
It is a
Yeah.
nice looking
Yeah.
pump station.
How far down did you go for that?
What's that with the?
How big a hole, or how deep a hole
How
was
deep
it?
is that? Jeez, I don't remember. That one's
That was, I remember
30
looking at
feet,
it
I
one time.
think.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
deep.
Yeah, that one's deep, as well as the Peach Blow pump station in the middle. That was a huge hole. I remember driving past that every day on my way to work and just, wow, it's massive. And the comments that we would get from folks in the community of, what are they building there? And then eventually there's a building on top.
Mhm.
So Lower Elm Creek is on Bale Canyon Road. That was almost a $12 million station there. That one's kind of hidden back off of River's Edge Drive. But it's a really nice station as well. It really more mirrors our Alum Creek pump station, which is further over to the east. Those are our two main influence into the plant, the Alum Creek plant. Peach Blow pump station, like I mentioned, is on Old State Road near the Evans Farm property. And then the Cheshire pump station is at the corner of Africa and Cheshire Road, of course, on the Army Corps property. And then upcoming, we have Berlin Business Park. Of course, that's just getting ready to start construction here in the near future. East Alum Creek Pump Station, that's on Africa Road, north of the Cheshire Pump Station. We eventually do need a new station there. That's going to be either development-driven or Central Elm Creek-driven, because it would be an influent into the Central Elm Creek plant. But it also would need more of a near-term upgrade depending on the amount of development that occurs in that I-71, 36, 37 area to get us through a few years before we build a new station and redirect it in. So that's just kind of a placeholder until we see, what the development demands in that area become. And then Berkshire Township Pump Station, that's a project that's been on hold for quite some time, but now that the interchange project is under design, I would anticipate that to be moving forward, likely by 2024 for sure. And then Central Elm Creek, I know you've all seen this slide before, but really it was more just to update you on where we are currently. We've had recent meetings with ODOT as well as the EPA. Meeting with ODOT went very well. Had discussions on, I don't know if you can see my mouse here. No. On discharging on the East Branch at 3637, where it's called Big Run, continues, I'm sorry, the West Branch. Big Run continues north from the West Branch where it kind of the terminus is up there at 3637. We're trying to get a discharge in the 3637 right of way. ODOT seemed favorable. We prepared a set of plans, submitted those to ODOT for preliminary approval. We're currently waiting on a response from them. Also met with EPA last week, talked about our plans with the ODOT right of way. And basically just trying to get a finalization of what our limits would be for that plant to discharge at that location. So both of those submittals have happened recently. Next, we would be meeting with City of Columbus to kind of discuss what our plans are for the project and the flows, as well as eventually a submittal to Army Corps once we have our ducks in a row with the EPA and ODOT. All right, I'll turn it over to Eric for a few additional plant projects.
So we did start, you all were at the groundbreaking for the OECC project, so that is underway. We anticipate that going through March of 2024, maybe into the summer. We'll see how things go with the construction. But we are at 100% design at $46.7 million for this build. This is the first phase. The next phase will not need to be done until flow demands it in the future. This should take us to the ability to treat 9 MGD. Right now we're permitted to 6. We're not changing that permitted capacity right now, but we will in the future. We'll have a better idea of the actual capacity once the improvements are done. But we were able to secure the $5 million grant from the Ohio Builds. From the Ohio Builds grant. That's the Governor DeWine's.
Yes.
Yeah. And then OWDA loan for the remainder of the cost of the project. So.
And just so you're aware that number is higher than what you've seen in the past. That's because that includes all the construction phase services, the design services, and everything to get us to this point, which those have never been contemplated as part of the construction cost. The construction cost is still closer to the $40 million number that we've been talking about.
Right. That's a good point.
Maybe I could just make a comment on the OWDA loan again. A great way of looking at and enhancing our financial capabilities. Tracy brought the OWDA concept to us, and Raftelis ran all the numbers, and we came to the conclusion OWDA loan will save us a couple $1 million.
Wow.
It's so, again, it's phenomenal that, again, with financial management and expertise and leadership and relationships and so on, we could save, $2 million by using the OWDA loan. And that's, again, that shows the power of financial expertise. So thanks to everybody who was involved.
We have another out for trying to secure a CMAR contractor to do this work. It's at 30% design in Allen Creek. This should be the final major project at Allen Creek. That plan is, it's approaching 25, 30 years old, so that's why we've had to do several renovations. This project will, as soon as we get done with it, we'll be able to decommission the filters, which will prevent us from a $7 to $12 million capital job. That's why we flagged the $7 to $12 million savings. We've talked about that before. There's new furnaces, which these things they're water furnaces. They were early geothermal technology, and as nice as they sound, they're very expensive to maintain. So this will save us, quite a bit annually. We were also planning on, since we're decommissioning the filters, we were going to repurpose part of that building, which was a little expensive. We need some storage space out there. The chemical room, which is the picture all the way to the right, we have never used at that plant because we can meet our permit limits without a use of chemical addition. And we don't anticipate that changing anytime in the future. And the EPA was actually, we finally heard back and found out that we won't have to do a PTI change, which means this will be an easy. We're just gonna turn this room that's already got HVAC, it's concrete, and we gotta do some bearing calculations, but we can store heavy equipment on there too, we believe. So that's actually gonna save us about $350,000 to $400,000 on the original construction estimate. So we haven't even started the CMAR process, which the contractors have done a good job at value engineering and helping us with savings along the way to bring down that engineer's estimate for the final cost. So right now it's estimated at $3.2 million for the total cost of this project. And I should mention also, we'll probably save about $45,000 a year on the new UV equipment that we have on, that we're gonna install on electrical costs. So the package plant project, and we've talked about this, I'll just go through this very quickly and obviously can answer any questions. This takes care of, as Tiffany mentioned, a big chunk of the master plan that have all these pump stations and plants connected. We're taking down the Scioto Reserve plant, sending all of that flow to Lower Scioto. We have to build a pump station, a couple force mains to do that. So that project cost came in at $13.1 million. North Star upgrades, this is the cost sharing work that we have with Nationwide. We're gonna basically, I know you can't see the graphic, but what we have now is that train on the left, the red boxes are the new equipment. We're gonna be able to, with the new equipment, we'll be able to do a full discharge permit. So we won't be using the spray fields anymore. It won't be a beneficial reuse type of situation, which is actually better all around for pretty much all the interested parties. And then your favorite topic, the solid waste transfer station. We have a current fund balance of $2.6 million for this enterprise fund. Right now, we're budgeting revenue increase next year to $319,000. Right now, they anticipate with the new transfer station and the new flow pattern that will probably, we're hoping, I believe I might have typed it on there, sometime in the second quarter of 23. They're hoping March or April they'll be able to open that up.
Okay.
We'll see increased traffic, increased customers. They're estimating 15% increase for part of the year. And we'll know a lot more once this opens. So, the projected revenue may be more in 24. The budget expenditures here for this account are salaries, consultant contractor fees that have to do with repurposing the existing site, which will be the public customer drop-off. So now we'll be able to completely separate the public from the commercial users, which is, it would be very well appreciated by the current users and, down the road in the future. We've got GMP3 amendment that I'm actually bringing to session tomorrow for approval, but this will cap the construction at $5.6 million. The most recent increase had to do with increases in some materials and the scale house building and things like that. They've taken it to 100% design, so that's where we're at with that. Right now they're working on the foundation for the new transfer station. You can see this drone photograph there on the bottom. They've got the site open up. If you haven't been by it, you can see a lot. If anybody wants a tour, we're more than happy to figure that out and schedule it. But they were able to get quite a lot done with the earthwork before the winter hit. The work they have in front of them, they can do most of it in the winter. So they're going to keep working through the winter. We'll see how that goes with the weather. And as I mentioned, sometime in the second quarter of next year is when they hope to open. And one of the pieces that we've been working on, and I finally got information back, I've got to get with Tracy and Tiffany on all this, but the future access to the shooting range is already guaranteed. I mean, it's going to happen. And I've got a couple of options depending on what the future is there and what everyone wants to do. We can talk more in detail on that later. about having access and what can be done with that site to increase parking and provide parking. Both options provide, you know, enough parking, it's just how close are they gonna be and that kind of thing, so. That's something that we've gotta, you know, probably talk more about in the next month or two. Any questions on the transfer station work or the budgeting?
I mean,
Okay, that's all we have, so we can take any additional questions that you all may have.
Any questions?
Yeah, you've covered most of the topics. I just wanted to have just kind of a brief conversation about Intel. You know, just what you're learning, working with the other interested parties and what you're seeing.
Sounds like if you build it, they will come, right? So, just trying to kind of gauge what that looks like with economic development, making sure that we're building the appropriate size of plant, I think with the initial phase, make sure that it's expandable to whatever that appropriate capacity is that we may need for whatever those users are that we didn't originally plan for when we set this thing up. So I think that's where we are now, is making sure that we're, you know, reacting appropriately to what development may be coming, specifically in Berlin Business Park as well as Harlem Township. Those are the two areas that, you know, we may see the most, the most development demands. That, you know, it's surprising when we sit in those meetings how close Harlem Township is to Intel.
Yes.
I mean, it
Yes.
almost touches it.
Within a half mile
That's
of property that is actually owned by Intel. and
Right.
making-
Yeah, I mean,
Not
not the phase one, but
fabs,
the, right, yeah,
yeah.
so that's eye-opening, and that, to me, that just shows, you know, the fact that we need to really get in there and start working with the township and making sure that we're setting things up
Mhm.
appropriately.
Right.
Yeah, as I mentioned, Harlem Township does have a task force put together that is working on it. They're going through the process. It's gonna take a while yet, but they're kind of shell-shocked by the announcement and the potential impact.
Yeah, I know currently the city's tunnel, they told me they plan to have it complete, I believe, by the end of 2025. Tracy may know better, more than me at this point, but that's our plan, is just to make sure that we're staying out ahead of that with our master plan and being ready the day that that shaft is constructed to head north out of that location. So, you know, that's our goal, is just to make sure that, and also that the development community is aware of what we're doing so that they can plan appropriately as well.
Yeah, and Harlem Township's got to figure out how they want their township to look from
Right.
a land use standpoint.
Right.
So, well, thank you.
Thank you
Great-
so
great work,
much.
Great presentation.
I have nothing. I think
Any,
we're gonna take a 5-minute break again. We're gonna take another 5-minute break.
you want to?
Yeah, because I want to catch Tiffany on another issue.
Oh, sure,
which is here.
sure. Yes. Let's have a 5-minute recess, more